if that's how you're defining push versus pull, then you can always twist my arm and say, yeah, but isn't the team pulling in work? Yeah. The idea is that I'm trying to be consistent with my definition of pull versus push. So I'm always looking at it from the team's perspective. So the team either pushes work or the team pulls in work. So when you push work, you're pushing into a fixed time box. When you're pulling based on available capacity. That's how I'm defining push versus pull. If you're defining it differently, then that's fine too, because the product owner does not push in work. It's the team that pulls in work into the sprint backlog, because they're the ones doing it. Right? So I'll tell you from my Scrum Master experience, and I work with Scrum Masters all the time. So my essentially full-time job is to be an Agile coach. I hire, I mentor Scrum Masters all the time. The things that I always tell Scrum Masters is, in the first 1 month, nobody is asking you to come up with a great idea of a process optimization or behavior optimization. All I want you to do is to listen to the team and make notes, which means watch for repetitive trends of impediments, watch for any repeating trends of local optimizations. So like bottlenecks or certain dependencies that are constantly stopping the supply chain from moving forward, if you will, right? Watch for those opportunities, make a list. Your retrospectives are your best friend. So even if it's a 5-minute retrospective, talk about the one thing that you've noticed in the sprint and see if that resonates with everybody on the team. Or ask the team that if we only have to talk for 5 minutes in the retrospective, what is the one thing we should talk about, so we don't make the same mistake in the next planning? Or what is the one thing that went really well that we want to capitalize on, right? So as a Scrum Master, your job in the first couple of weeks is to basically pay attention and look at how the system is working. Identify key stakeholders, who are the power players in the various levels of your management lines, who are making decisions on people, who are making decisions on process, who are making decisions on audits, on reviews, on customers. Look for potential, like I said, bottlenecks or thresholds, or where systems can break down. Talk to your colleagues and try to get an understanding of the kind of work that is being done. Ask if the company has agile coaches. If they have agile coaches, try to get a sense of the agile maturity of this team. Is there some sort of a pattern or a trend that we are looking at for this team from an agile maturity standpoint? Like, what are they struggling with? Have they gone through some kind of training? Do they have the cadence that is operating at whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks? How are they doing with that cadence? Which means, when do they plan? When do they review? When do they retrospect? How is the say-do ratio? If they said they would do 10 things, did they finish 10 things? Which means, how is their sprint forecast ratio? Is it trending at 100%? Or is it 50%? Is it 60%? And if it is low, why is it low? Why is there constant slippage? See, look for velocity variations, look for throughput variations. Look for the soft data, which is, do people get along with each other? Is the dynamic healthy? Right? Do they joke around? You don't have to be best friends, but if you don't even get along with people that you work with, it's not going to be a high-performing team. Look at any team, whether it's a music band or it's a sports team, if they've accomplished wonders in the world, it's because they had a healthy dynamic. So it's important to have a healthy dynamic on that team. Right? So this is about having transparency and open conversations. So watch for those dysfunctions also. So there are a lot of things that you would need to do as a Scrum Master. If you're looking for some sort of a checklist of specific things that you can track, here's a good resource for that. Check out this website called scrummasterchecklist.org. It's a list of about 55 odd things that a Scrum Master should be doing for their team. That should get you off the races at least. The product owner is the content expert, so they decide the what. The developers decide the how, which means they are the design expert, right? So you want clear separation of duties between content and design, which is the what and the why and the how and the how much. In Kanban, it's a little more fungible, which means there's transferability of skills. So you still might have a product owner who will prioritize essentially how the tickets are going to move in the workflow, but the teams are going to be able to pull. So in Kanban, you don't have a role called a Scrum Master. In Kanban, everything is about optimizing the flow. So in Kanban, you have a role called a flow master. A flow master is responsible for things like making sure that the workflow is set up with the right stages that need to be tracked, making sure they're tracking the WIP limits or the work in progress limits, making sure the classes of service or the categorizations of those swim lanes of work or those cycles have been clearly defined, making sure they're tracking lead times, cycle time, and things like that. So the flow master will work with the product owner to make sure that the product backlog or the backlog of work is always deep enough that the team, as soon as they have capacity, they can go to the top of the backlog and pull in more work. And the team pulls in work based on available capacity. They don't have to wait for a certain sprint to come in. So it's more dynamic, right? There's a lot of coordination involved in Kanban, more than Scrum, I'd say, because in Scrum, you're all focused on one thing. In Kanban, you could be having multiple mutually exclusive goals running in parallel at the same time. And so there's a lot more coordination required there, right? If you're looking for more information on Kanban in general, look up, I forgot the website name, but if you type these keywords on Google, the first hit will be the right website. It's called the Lean Kanban University. They have a bunch of free stuff on their website in terms of case studies and articles. They also have classes and certification classes, non-certification classes. I've taken a bunch of classes with them in my career when I was a Scrum Master, and I liked it. So take a look at it. You might find some good information there, right? Pushing for the refinement of the DoD or the definition of done. So remember, everybody, the definition of ready and the definition of done, these boundary conditions are going to be informed by your reality, which means these will evolve as you learn more about your project, if you will, right? So these have to be evolving over a period of time. They will get more and more robust over a period of time. And so a Scrum Master's job is to constantly remind the team to update these boundary conditions and constantly measure the requirements coming into the sprint against the definition of ready. Don't let the product owner accept stuff or approve stuff that doesn't meet the definition of done. So you are like the conscience of the team as a Scrum Master. They can ignore you, but there's going to be a consequence of that in life, right? So the Scrum Master is supposed to remind people to make the right thing to do easier to do. And so set up these boundary conditions. When you set up these boundary conditions, you can isolate the team from unnecessary noise in your system. Unnecessary noise like incomplete work coming in, half-baked stuff coming in, half-baked stuff going out. You can avoid all of that. The technical debt, the operational debt, documentation debt, all that stuff is basically a consequence of compromising on your definition of ready or definition of done. So don't compromise on those, right?